Growing up, journalists were my heroes, and they were the superheroes. They were Clark Kent and Spider-Man and Lois Lane. All of them in their human incarnation were journalists. They were people that cared about the little guy, and they used their wits and their smarts to go out there and stick their finger in the eye of power, and that was really exciting to me. As I got older, I thought of newspapers. That's how we learn about what was going on in the world. I mean, you hear first draft of history, but what it really meant to me was my dad shaking out the paper in his favorite chair every morning, reading it from cover to cover, and telling us what he thought was the important stuff going on in the world. That's how I learned about what was happening.
I think that you put this paper down on the porch of most people across the country, and it's the best paper they've ever seen. I think it's a very, very good newspaper.
I think we've done more than anybody else to keep the big boys honest.
The businesses I cover are these like nationally known and internationally known businesses such as Starbucks and Costco, Nordstrom, Amazon.com, Boeing, Microsoft. Yeah, it's been really fun.
It's the oldest business in Seattle.
Our founding principles, free speech and expression, they have been articulated through our newspapers. We have a press and a history of a free press and a tradition of journalism that the rest of the world looks up to. It's one of the best things this country has created. It, to me, has always been the best thing to be a part of. I can't imagine a profession that I respect more, or that I would be more honored to be a part of, than American journalism.
And so I was feeling fairly good about life. Walked into the paper at 1 minute past noon, and Schwartz.
The editors all started like running around, and people were like, "What? And everybody started looking at the television, and it was King 5 reporting that the Seattle PI might shut down.
The first thing I thought of was that it might not be true, because you know, I didn't know how good this information was.
What? How's that possible? No, we would know, right? We would know if our own paper were going to be shut down. The next day, we found, and I was one of the reporters who had to get on that story and write it. And we basically wrote this little story saying, this is what King 5 is reporting, and nobody here knows anything.
That's true. I mean, I think my first thought was the sadness for the people here who have given so much under such tough circumstances. And
it was kind of like being in the middle of a wasp's nest that had just been hit by a kid's rock from a kid's slingshot.
Well, I was looking at everybody's faces, and everybody just looked so solemn and sort of in shock and sad, and just realizing, wow, I'm not going to work with these people anymore, and we fought a really good fight, and that's it. Yeah.
Well, it's to remember the great Western writer Edward Abbey's remark, when the situation is hopeless, there's nothing to worry about.
I think a lot of Seattle really understands that that this is definitely a sad day.
I think that there has been a tendency recently to just want to kind of throw those guys out and start over. And I can kind of relate to that sometimes, because you're right, the newspapers have looked exactly the same for 100 years. And these guys have more or less been doing the same kind of job. They haven't been really flexible, and they haven't kept up with the way things are changing. They weren't always willing to try new things and to go out on a limb. Because it had been working for 100 years. It was going to work for 100 more, you know? And so I think, yeah, there's a tendency to just be like, okay, guys, your era is over. Move aside. Something else is happening now, whatever that's going to be. But I personally think that there is nothing like the experience that journalists, career journalists, people that have worked on newspapers for decades can bring to this industry whatever iteration it's in. And so I think there is a place for them if they're willing to be flexible and they're willing to accept that things are changing. Their knowledge is still valuable, but it's not going to be applied in the same way.